During the Hunter Academy's tournament, he shocked one of the world's strongest hunters. Right as the matches began, everyone realized that something was very unusual. One by one, the students charged at him with every skill they had honed, but he defeated them all with his bare hands. No fancy skills, no special weapons, just perfect timing and overwhelming power. Even the officials and guild scouts watching from above couldn't believe their eyes. And when Sok advanced to the finals, he crushed the Academy's top student, sending the entire arena into chaos. Just when everyone thought the tournament was over, Lee Si-hun herself stepped onto the stage. A world-ranked hunter, a monster compared to the other students. Unlike the rest, she immediately understood that Seok was hiding something far more dangerous than mere physical strength. Their battle pushed Seok to his limits, more than anyone ever had. His body slowed, his breathing grew heavy, and exhaustion began to drag him down. He collapsed, and that's when Sok finally unleashed the terrifying power he had kept hidden. He ignited his black flames, not to burn his enemy, but to incinerate the very concept of fatigue. In an instant, his exhausted body surged with vitality. His speed returned, his strength resurfaced, and for the first time, even Si-hun was forced to recognize that the man before her was no ordinary rookie. So, how did this guy get so strong? It all began when our main character, Hyun-sok, recounted how he found himself transported to another world where he was asked to be its savior. After 20 years in that world, he found himself facing the final boss monster with his 3 teammates, a saintess, a mage, and a knight. The boss monster praised Sok, saying he had fought valiantly for a so-called hero. Sok sarcastically replied that the monster didn't look so great himself. The boss, having no sense of humor, became enraged and lunged at Sok with a stone-splitting slash. However, Sok blocked the attack with his spear, creating a deafening clash. Meanwhile, the mage was trying to provide support from the rear. The boss monster threatened to tear Seok apart if he didn't surrender. The monster boasted that the land they stood on was a kingdom built by his own claws and fangs. The two continued to clash, unleashing powerful attacks. But Sok quickly grew tired of it all and decided it was time to end the fight. He channeled energy into his spear using a skill called Paradox Flame and struck the boss. The blow created a massive explosion that sent the monster flying, crushing even the large boulders in its path. The two continued their brutal exchange of blows, making everyone else at the scene look like helpless infants. Sok managed to land a hit on the monster, but it arrogantly claimed it was nothing more than a weak scratch. However, Sok quickly showed him just how much that scratch could cut down his pride. With his flaming spear, Sok left a deep gash on the monster's body. And this time, the monster realized it was finished. It collapsed to the ground as the flames began to consume its entire body. The monster praised Seok, saying it never expected someone strong enough to defeat it. Seok informed the beast that he never belonged to its garbage world in the first place. The boss didn't believe him, thinking Sok was just spouting nonsense. Even so, it was confident its body would merge with the land and that one day it would be resurrected. Suddenly, it realized it was being erased from existence. Sok mockingly asked if it finally understood the situation. He told the monster that the black flame burning it was his special ability, which he called the Paradox Flame. He added that unlike normal fire, which burns with oxygen, his flame used abstract concepts as fuel. Seok told the monster that while it might have been resurrected countless times in the future, the flame currently burning it would prevent that from ever happening again, as its very existence was being erased. The boss monster then tried to taunt Sok, saying that he may have killed it, but he would never be remembered as a hero who saved the world, because the people he called comrades were just waiting for him to die in this battle. Sok replied that he already knew. The Saintess quickly interjected, telling Seok he couldn't trust the words of a monster. However, Seok began to expose the Saintess herself. He said that she constantly professed her love for him, but in reality, she hated him for being an outsider. It turned out all her attempts to seduce him were just a part of her plan, so that when the time came to eliminate him, he would find it difficult to strike her down. The Saintess was stunned to realize that Sok had seen right through her. Seok continued, saying he knew the mage and the knight were no different. It turned out the knight had received a treasure from the emperor as a reward for killing Seok. Apparently, the emperor feared Sok would usurp his throne. As for the mage, He was obsessed with human experimentation and hated Seok for opposing the slave system. Seok told them he had known all of these truths for 5 years. The monster was shocked to hear this and asked Suk why he didn't just use his power to rule the world. Suk revealed he had no interest in that, because all he wanted was to go home. Flashing back 20 years to the year 2005, Suk was just an ordinary 20-year-old office worker until a goddess brought him to this world. The goddess told Suk he was brought there to save it. The moment Suk set foot in this new world, he realized it was a living hell. Suk tried everything he could to return home, but the goddess told him he had to defeat the horde of monsters and save the world, as it was the only way back to Earth. So, Suk began training to fight against the monsters. Speaking of the corruption of this world, he once saved a child from the front lines. But the guards wouldn't let the boy into the village. They told him to just let the child die, since he wouldn't make it anyway. It turned out to be a damn world that would rather abandon the injured than heal them. As if that wasn't bad enough, their poor medical and sanitary conditions made everything worse. They once even amputated a soldier's leg for a simple infection. Even after getting the child into the village, Suk faced another problem: the fanatics. The village's religious leaders claimed the child survived because he was possessed by a demon. They proposed cleansing the boy with fire, since they were already conducting an exorcism ceremony anyway. As if it were a normal occurrence, they burned people like they were dry firewood. Suk was completely shocked, unable to believe he had landed in a world with no concept of human rights. Despite this, Seok survived for the next 20 years, and now he had officially defeated the monsters to save the world. Seok breathed a sigh of relief, thinking everything was finally over, but the knight moved to attack him. He said he was glad Seok understood they couldn't let him live. Suk turned to him, letting him know that he truly despised their world. At this point, even the knight knew he stood no chance against Suk. He realized that they had essentially created one monster to tame another. Just then, Suk looked up at the sky and shouted for the goddess, telling her to keep her promise, since he had saved the world as she asked. Suddenly, the sky tore open, and the goddess appeared, praising him for enduring so much. However, Suk was in no mood for her praise, and reminded her of the promise to send him back to Earth. The goddess asked Suk if he truly disliked this world, even though he had gained power so great it could threaten even her. She told him that if he returned to Earth, all his achievements as a hero would vanish like foam on the water. Suk told the goddess to stop beating around the bush, as he knew she was thrilled he was leaving. The goddess agreed, saying this world no longer needed a monster. But she still asked if he would regret his decision to return. Suk told her that the only thing he yearned for now was to return to the world he once knew. Suk was tired of this world that had pushed him down a path to hell, and so the goddess granted his wish. A brilliant golden light enveloped Suk, and the goddess informed him that his physical body on Earth was no longer there. For that reason, she would place his soul into a new vessel. Suk was stunned to hear this and asked the goddess who he would become. The goddess told him she couldn't explain the details, but she revealed it was a body destined for a tragic end. Even so, she was quite sure he would survive, as that was his greatest strength. Suk told the goddess he didn't care one bit, because as long as he could return to Earth, he would definitely survive. Compared to what he had to endure in her garbage world, this was nothing. Soon after, Suk opened his eyes in his new body, and now he was in the year 2025. It turned out he had possessed the body of a commoner named Chan Sok. Suk sat up in bed, relieved to no longer see the traitors who were always plotting to kill him. Then, he noticed a mirror in the room and walked over to check his new appearance. This was the moment he truly awakened to the fact that he was back on Earth. He looked around the room and saw there was clean water to use, a far cry from the garbage world he had just left. Even starting a fire was easy, instead of having to chop wood like a madman. Suk celebrated, because this was exactly what he had always longed for. He even found a box of fried chicken on the table. Without hesitation, he grabbed a piece of chicken, and just one bite was enough to drive him wild with joy. He shed tears of happiness, finally able to taste real food after so many years living in hell. While he was busy celebrating his return to Earth, he didn't notice a bright red light appearing in the middle of the street. Since Earth was now in the year 2025, he realized that this world and the world he was sent to shared the same timeline. However, he wasn't too bothered by it. No matter how difficult and harsh Earth might be, he believed it would never be as bad as the world he had just returned from. After finishing his meal, Suk went into the bathroom to enjoy the warm water and then lay down coolly under the air conditioner. He walked to the window and looked up at the clear blue sky, trying to take in everything he had missed for so long. While he was pondering what to do with his life, a hideous monster suddenly appeared outside the window, staring at him. Seok screamed in terror, not understanding what the hell he was seeing. Just then, a loudspeaker announcement echoed throughout the area. It informed all residents that a corrosion rift had appeared right in the apartment complex. Suk was completely confused, not understanding what the broadcast system was talking about. The announcer continued to urge all residents to evacuate immediately to the underground shelter. Suk was still in shock until he realized that monsters had completely swarmed the windows and were trying to get inside. Suk snapped to his senses as the window shattered, and the monsters began to pour into the building. He ran for his life, silently wondering what kind of monsters were chasing him. His quick thinking saved his life as he jumped through another window and hid on the ledge, waiting for the monsters to pass. When they were gone, he climbed back inside, breathing a sigh of relief for finally shaking off the pack. Suddenly, he saw a kid in the distance and rushed over, asking what he was doing in such a dangerous place. He urged them both to run to the shelter, but the kid was more interested in the monster he had just seen because he was eager to kill it himself. The kid invited Sok to come along. Suk looked at him with exasperation, wondering what the hell this brat was talking about. It turned out Earth had been like this for the past 13 years. Since the kid was adamant about not going to the shelter, Sok had no choice but to follow him. The kid then explained that corrosion rifts were gates that released monsters, and no one knew why they formed or when and where they would appear. After hearing this, Sok began to reflect on how he had fought for his life in another world, only to return and find Earth in a similarly terrible state. The kid was surprised he had to explain these things to Sok and asked why he didn't know. Sok lied, saying he used to live in America, but this raised another inconsistency, as people could no longer travel from the US to Korea. The boy stared at Sok in confusion, not understanding what he was rambling about. Sok quickly changed the subject, asking about the hunter the boy said he admired so much. The boy replied that her name was Lee Si-hun. The boy added that Si-hun belonged to the Zanabi Guild and was ranked 10th in the world. He heard her main weapon was a great sword, and she was currently in Cherwan, dealing with a corrosion rift. Seeing the boy rattle off everything he knew about Si-hun, Seok could only breathe a sigh of relief for successfully changing the topic. However, he still couldn't believe that ordinary people could fight monsters, just like in the other world he had just left. The kid was still chattering away when Suk suddenly covered his mouth and told him to be quiet. They peeked around the corner and saw 5 monsters in the distance. However, Seok keenly noticed another one hiding, making the total 6. Seok silently thanked the heavens that this new body had some stamina. Already used to fighting while surrounded, Seok calculated that handling these monsters alone wouldn't be a problem. The only complication was the kid with him, and just as he turned to look, the brat was already trembling. Sok sighed in frustration, not believing all his determination to kill monsters had vanished upon a real encounter. Sok was still hesitating, not knowing what to do since he had no weapon. Then, suddenly, he noticed the presence of mana in the air. The moment he confirmed it was exactly the same as in the other world, Sok decided to charge and attack the monsters. He stepped out from his hiding place and struck one of them with his paradox flame. Sok silently gave thanks that he still retained the skill that had been etched into his soul from the other world. Although the firepower wasn't as strong as he expected, he believed it was more than enough for his purpose. The monster's head caught fire, causing it to writhe in agony. The boy, meanwhile, was full of praise, saying Sok was so cool. He immediately declared Sok his master, saying he possessed a unique skill. Sok also quickly realized that rare skills on Earth were classified as unique. The monster was still burning fiercely when the kid got the urge to run out and confirm if it was dead. He rushed towards the blazing fire, despite Sok's attempts to warn him not to get close until the target was completely dead. Just as he was about to get hurt, Seok flew in like a superhero, blocking the flames with his bare hands and injuring himself in the process. Sek scolded the boy, telling him to stop watching nonsense on the internet, because reality was clearly different from the movies. Then, Sek borrowed the stick the boy was holding. He used it to cut down the approaching monsters. Seok swung the stick decisively, as if he were using a real sword, leaving the boy wide-eyed in astonishment at what he was seeing. He marveled in praise and asked if Seok was a hunter in disguise. As for Seok, he was not happy with the start of his new life, because he had ended up returning to the days of slaughter he had always tried to escape. A while later, they both reached the shelter, and Seok decided to just call the kid Brat instead of treating him like an elementary school student. Just as they entered the shelter, the boy's mother spotted him and shouted his name. It turned out the boy's name was Eun Song. She rushed to embrace her son, profusely thanking Seok for bringing him to safety. She understood it must have been a difficult journey. While the woman was busy hugging her son, Seok noticed she was covered in expensive designer brands, indicating their family was very wealthy. Seok immediately understood why Eun Seong was such a difficult brat. Then, suddenly, the outer wall was smashed by a monster. A scene of panic erupted instantly. People trampled over each other, running for their lives. No one could believe the sturdy defensive wall had been destroyed. And while everyone was running for their lives, Eun Seong called for Seok to follow them. But Seok just stood there, rooted to the spot in a rage. He couldn't believe his one wish to live a normal life was being disrupted like this. Anger boiled in his veins. He wondered if his request was too much to ask. He slowly looked at the burn on his palm from saving Eun Song, then turned and called the boy by the nickname he had just given him. Brat. Seok asked Eun Song why he was so determined to become a hunter when his family was clearly very rich. Seok knew the kid could find a comfortable shelter somewhere and live a peaceful life without ever having to fight. Just then, Eun Song tearfully revealed the painful truth about his father, who had lost his life to monsters. It turned out a corrosion fissure had opened right in the underground shelter where they were hiding. Everyone was certain they were safe, but that was the day Song realized a cruel truth. Nowhere on this planet was safe. Song declared that while he might not be strong now, he had a plan to become the greatest hunter and eradicate every single corrosion fissure and save the world. Seong said this with all his determination, thinking Seok might find it foolish. But Seok cut him off, affirming that the boy would indeed become a great hunter. However, he then poured cold water on his hopes, bluntly stating that the kid would never be able to save the world. Seong's mother, in a state of panic, urged her son that it was time to leave. Seong still hesitated, unwilling to go because Seok was standing in the monster's path. Suddenly, a blinding light flashed from behind, and when they turned around, they were stunned to see that Seok had already defeated the monster with his paradox flame. Seok told Song straight up that the kid wouldn't get a turn to save the world, because he would be the one to do it. With an arrogant smile, Seok told Seong that saving the world was a job for those who've done it before. After everything settled down, and after his promise to Seong to save the world, Seok just slunk back to his apartment to grind games and eat junk food. Despite confidently declaring to everyone that he would save the world, that confidence didn't last long. The fire of his passion was extinguished by a mountain of snacks and video games. On top of that, Seok felt his presence was redundant. After all, there were countless hunters out there dedicating themselves day and night to protecting the world. Just then, Seok picked up his phone, intending to order more food. And that's when reality slapped him hard. He had completely spent his severance pay. It turned out the previous owner of this body used to be an employee at a logistics company, but he lost his job when the company went bankrupt due to a disaster from a corrosion fissure. He suddenly realized he had to get his ass up and find a job immediately because his pockets were empty. He struggled to find work, but it was incredibly difficult because normal jobs had all but vanished due to the constant appearance of corrosion fissures. In fact, most companies were on the brink of bankruptcy, leaving Seok completely lost and unsure of what to do. As he was lying sprawled on his bed in despair, a hunter recruitment notice suddenly popped up on his phone. Since he already had plenty of experience in this field, Seok immediately dashed to the Hunter Association. As soon as he entered the building, he saw crowds of people gathered with the same goal, to become a hunter. He overheard two guys discussing how the selection process was now just a formality. The deciding factor for getting chosen these days was showcasing a unique skill. Everything seemed normal, until the legend, Sigun, appeared, instantly creating a commotion that sent the candidates into a frenzy. All the candidates erupted with joy when they saw her, as everyone had assumed she'd be absent, busy dealing with the corrosion fissure in Chicago. The candidates speculated that the Janabi Guild had personally sent Sigun to scout the most outstanding talents. But the question was, who was her real target? It turned out to be a female candidate named Han Sunga, the Academy's valedictorian, whose awakened ability was to control electricity. While reading her file, Sigun teased Sunga about her power, asking if she could charge a battery. Sigun's assistant quickly reminded her that the girl was a hunter, not a generator. He mentioned a rumor that Sunga was highly skilled in using her ability, meaning she would be extremely useful. Another of Sigun's assistants interrupted, asserting that hunting in corrosion fissures was a real life-or-death battle. And even if candidates had outstanding records at the Academy, there were plenty of cases where they performed poorly in actual combat. Sigun praised the man for his sharp insight and rewarded him with a piece of candy, while the other assistant looked on with a resentful expression. Sigun knew full well that training and real combat were worlds apart. That's why students who were only used to the safe, simulated environments of the Academy would struggle immensely to survive. She believed it would take Sunga quite some time to adapt. A few minutes later, the host stepped onto the stage to welcome everyone to the arena. He announced that the first match was about to begin, and Sigun hoped Sunga would prove her worth and convince her. The host then told the audience that the first candidate was an interesting case, as he was a civilian who didn't even come from a hunter academy, which was quite unusual. The host was curious where Sok got the guts to stand on the stage, and by calling his name, Sok was introduced to the crowd. His opponent also stepped onto the stage, and the host announced the rules. He informed them that personal weapons, aside from those provided by the association, were not allowed. Furthermore, inflicting life-threatening injuries was also forbidden. In his heart, Sok only cared about saving the world, while still eating well and living the way he wanted. And to do that, he realized the first step was to get a good result in this tournament. When everything was ready, the referee started the match. Sok's opponent lit his spear on fire while simultaneously mocking Sok as a piece of trash who didn't even know how to channel mana. The guy hadn't even done anything yet, but he was already taunting Sok, telling him to consider this defeat an honor. He charged toward Sok, boasting that he was the undefeated spearmaster of the Hunter Academy. Just then, the guy suddenly realized he couldn't see Sok anymore. Before he could understand what was happening, Sok appeared beside him and landed a punch to his gut, sending a wave of intense pain through his body. Sok didn't stop there. He followed up with an uppercut to the chin to take the guy down. The man collapsed to his knees in agony, a few of his teeth knocked out. Seok was surprised to see the guy go down, since he had held back, not wanting to injure him. Sok just assumed the guy was weak because he was a rookie, as he didn't want to believe that hunters were actually this pathetic. Meanwhile, Sigun had witnessed what Sok did and was completely stunned. She immediately took out her tablet to investigate Sok's background. She discovered he was just an ordinary employee at a logistics company, and what's more, there was no mana in his body at all. One of Sigun's assistants said Sok's punch might have been a lucky shot, but Sigun gave him a piece of candy, telling him to shut up. She knew that Sok had intentionally not accumulated any mana. Back in the arena, Sok decided to end the match once and for all, as he needed to prove his abilities. Seok then advanced toward his opponent, and the guy nearly pissed his pants when he saw Seok targeting him. Seok reassured him that it wouldn't be a fatal wound, so there was no need to worry. Despite promising to go easy, Seok ended up knocking the guy unconscious, officially securing his first victory. This astonished all the officials, and Sigun noticed that the other guilds had already started planning their next move. However, Sigun intended to act before them so she could see what Sok's true strength was. Sigun stood up to leave, and when her colleagues asked where she was going, she revealed she had to meet with the association's chairman. As the competition continued, Seok kept defeating his opponents with relative ease. Seok was disappointed by the weakness of these so-called new hunters. He didn't even use a weapon against them, content to beat them to a pulp with his bare fists. This battle left Sok completely disillusioned with whatever they were teaching at the Hunter Academy, because he hadn't faced a single decent candidate yet. After that, Sok advanced to the final match, where he would face Sunga. Everyone was counting on her to stop Sok's overwhelming winning streak. The moment Sunga stepped onto the stage, Seok complimented her, saying she was the only one he'd seen accumulate the most mana among all the contestants. In return, Sunga told Sok he might have gotten this far by luck, but she asserted there would be no more lucky breaks. Sunga gripped her sword, saying she had realized Sok didn't have any unique skills, which was why he only knew how to punch everything in front of him. However, she let him know she had no intention of going easy on him. A bewildered Sok thanked her for her concern. As for a unique skill, he actually had one, but he didn't plan on using it against Sunga. Sunga then took a deep breath as she gathered her mana, ready to unleash her fury upon Sok. Once she was ready, she charged toward Sok, but to her utter astonishment, Seok leaped into the air to dodge the attack. Sunga couldn't believe what had just happened. Sok had basically dodged a lightning bolt with a simple jump. As for Sok, he was very impressed with her skill. By channeling electricity through the blade and hilt, she had turned them into magnets. With that, she combined magnetic force with the power of her sword draw, turning it into a railgun. Seok told Sunga that she was the best he'd faced so far, but pointed out that she had missed a crucial detail. He said she was too focused on attacking quickly. Basically, her mistake was that in order to accelerate her sword draw, she had established a magnetic rail in mid-air. Sok told her that no matter how fast and strong it was, no fool would just stand still and take a hit when the attack's trajectory was laid out so obviously before them. Sunga still thought Seok was just lucky. She told him not to get complacent, because she could defeat people like him without even using that technique. She charged at Sok with another, slower technique. He easily sidestepped it and asked Sunga if she was really that stupid. He had already dodged her fastest technique, yet she was trying to hit him with an even slower one. Trying not to lose to Sok, Sunga unleashed a powerful technique that cracked the ground. Sok quickly realized this girl was pushing herself to her limit. He knew that if she kept this up, she would fall apart. Sok decided to end the match, saying they'd had enough fun. He teased her, telling her to raise her left hand if his next move hurt. Before Sunga could react, Sok closed the distance and punched her straight in the stomach, sending her internal organs into complete disarray, while she was still trying to process what was happening. Sok ended the match with another punch that sent her flying. Sunga was defeated, leaving everyone stunned, as no one expected Sok to be able to overwhelm the Academy's valedictorian. Sok turned to leave the stage, but suddenly noticed Sunga was raising her left hand. Sok remembered his joke when he told her to raise her left hand if it hurt, and he was surprised to see her actually doing it. Before Sok could leave, the referee received some important information and quickly announced that the tournament schedule had been changed. He told Sok to rest for a moment, which left him completely confused, as the fight should have been over. Then, the referee made a shocking announcement, revealing that Sok and an active hunter would have a special exhibition match, leaving everyone stunned. It turned out the information about the active hunter had been announced to the audience on a screen only they could see. The crowd went wild, and Sok guessed the hunter must be incredibly high level. It turned out this hunter was none other than Sigun, and Seok wondered if she was here to test his abilities. Sigun stepped onto the stage with her greatsword, telling Sok that she had to fight him as there was no other way to verify his skills. She introduced herself and the guild she worked for, while also proposing a proper match with him. She let Sok know that he had the right to refuse this fight, as it was very sudden. Looking closer, Seok could understand why Sigun was ranked 10th in the world. Her calm demeanor and aura were truly impressive. Even knowing he would have a tough time facing Sigun with his current body, Sok didn't mind and gladly accepted the challenge. Sigun suggested they start the match immediately, which startled the referee. Sok confidently revealed that he hadn't used much energy, so he was still in great condition. Since he wanted to achieve the best possible result in the tournament, Seok concluded that fighting Sigun would help him accomplish that. Seok then grabbed his spear, hoping to see if he could raise his own value. 30 minutes after the match began, Seok was still standing, but he was struggling against Sigun's overwhelming power. Seok couldn't believe he was facing a woman with such immense physical strength. However, he was still able to push Sigun back, and he even realized that his speed had decreased compared to the early stages of the fight. Seok could see openings while fighting Sigun, but his body wasn't agile enough to exploit them. He was drenched in sweat and looked truly exhausted after just 30 minutes of facing her. Sigun then teased him, saying it had been a while since she'd hoped for a good warm-up, but she never expected Seok to tire out so quickly. Even so, she was still very impressed that Seok had managed to last that long, as she had initially predicted he would fall within the first 5 minutes. Sigun then charged towards Seok, intending to end the match. Seeing Sigun charging at him, Seok started racking his brain, trying to figure out what to do. He realized he had no mana reserves left, and even the mana in the air was very thin. Although he was reluctant to use his unique skill, he realized he had no other choice, and just as Sigun was about to reach him, he activated the Paradox Flame. Thanks to it, he was able to dodge Sigun's attack. Sigun was incredibly surprised, as she was quite certain she had swung her sword with such absolute power and precision that Seok shouldn't have been able to dodge it, but he did. She also noticed a black flame burning on his body, which made her even more curious. Seok smiled because he had just tapped into the power he trusted most before returning to Earth. Basically, the Paradox Flame doesn't burn physical matter like a normal flame. It ignites by using abstract concepts that he designates as fuel. At the moment, Seok couldn't burn concepts with high ignition points like his memories of himself or his reason, which left him with only one practical concept he could burn: fatigue. Seok charged towards Sigun, and she could see that his speed was now even faster than before. Sigun unleashed a powerful blow, forcing Seok to use all his strength to block it. She was very surprised to see that Seok could recover in such a short amount of time. The battle between them immediately escalated to a new level as they swung their weapons at each other, creating clashing sounds and flashing sparks. Sigun noticed the mana concentration in the air was fluctuating erratically, which was strange because the arena's settings hadn't changed at all. It turned out the Paradox Flame released mana when it burned abstract concepts, just as a normal flame releases heat when it burns physical matter. Now, Seok only needed to use mana to activate the Paradox Flame, and the Paradox Flame, in turn, burned away his fatigue to create more mana. This created an endless cycle. The two continued to charge at each other, shattering the arena floor with their powerful attacks. This was thanks to Seok's determination to not give up, as he was all too familiar with battles of attrition. At one point, she asked Seok if he could hold on, and Seok assured her he could. Seok then asked if she liked guys who don't know the meaning of giving up, and Sigun replied that she hated that type of person. Just as a burning tree leaves behind ashes, the Paradox Flame, it turned out, also left behind a residue. If everything was then burned away until only the residue remained, the Paradox Flame would finally disappear. After 4 intense hours of fighting, Sigun finally knocked Seok to the ground. She praised him for holding out for so long. As soon as Sigun was declared the winner, she took out a giant lollipop from her pocket and gave it to Seok, saying it was a reward for his effort. She let him know her business card was attached to the candy. Seok looked at the business card, and Sigun told him they would discuss the details later. She urged him to call her in the meantime. When the selection round ended, Seok was called to the front to receive his reward. A few days later, Seok used his smartphone to look up the information on the business card. He realized this smartphone basically provided everything he needed to know. Seok was on his way to meet Sigun when he ran into a giant man blocking his path. Seok asked the man who he was, but he just handed Seok his business card. Seok checked it and realized the man's name was Yu Sung-yun. He was a partner hunter of the TBS Guild, and without wasting any time, he urged Seok to join his guild. Hyun assured Seok that he would become a star if he decided to come and gain experience under him. Seok looked straight into Hyun's eyes and realized he wasn't lying. But at the same time, he remembered he had an appointment with Sigun, so he couldn't give Hyun an answer right away. Seok calmly told Hyun that he needed more time to think, but Hyun laughed and said he didn't expect an answer right now either. Right after that, he grabbed Seok's shoulder, leaned in closer, and told him to think it over carefully. After that ridiculous display, he left, not forgetting to tell Seok they would meet again soon. However, Seok immediately concluded that the TBS Guild was not part of his plans. He then called Sigun to ask where he should meet her. Sigun told him to come to a place called The Hut, located on the 2nd floor of the Hunter Association building. A while later, Seok arrived at the hut, which looked like a cafe. As soon as he walked in, Sigun called him over to her table. Seeing Seok's expression, she asked if something was wrong. Well, Seok revealed that a big guy named Hyun had tried to recruit him. Sigun was quite surprised that Hyun had shown interest in Seok and told him that the other guilds wouldn't dare make any more offers now. Suk asked Sigun if this also applied to the Janabi Guild. Sigun then revealed a shocking truth. She told Sok she wasn't interested in recruiting him, which made Sok ask why she wanted to meet him then. Sigun told Sok that she wanted him to work as a freelance hunter, independent of any guild. Sigun explained to Sok that Hyun most likely intended to offer him a subordinate position. Sok was confused and asked her what subordinate and partner hunter positions meant. Since Sok didn't come from a hunter academy, Sigun explained that the ranks of hunters within a guild are usually divided into three: subordinate, senior, and partner. Subordinates and seniors belong to teams led by partner hunters, so they are basically salaried employees. However, partner hunters own shares in the guild instead of receiving a salary, and they get a cut of the net profits the guild earns. Simply put, they could be considered business owners. It seems the first hunters who established guilds modeled them after law firms. It turns out one doesn't necessarily have to join a guild or go through the junior and senior ranks to become a partner hunter. Finally, Seok understood everything Sihun was saying. Basically, if he became famous and achieved incredible feats, the major guilds would automatically come chasing after him. Sihun confirmed this and happily gave Sok a piece of candy, making him wonder why this strange woman was giving him candy. Seok then reminded Sihun that he had no connections or backing, so it would be very difficult for him to receive decent requests. Sihun told Seok that she would help him with that, without charging any fees. Seok was very surprised, but at the same time, he had a vague idea of why Sihun was going to such lengths to help him. Sihun told Suk that she just wanted him to remember in the future that there was a guild called Zanabi that had helped him when he was still a nobody. In short, Sihun was helping Sok so that he would be indebted to her. Sihun then handed Sok an envelope, saying the decision to take the mission inside was up to him. Sok asked what it was, and she revealed it was a request from the city of Incheon. It seemed that on a place called Geldeong Island, a corrosion zone had formed 2 years ago after a failed attempt to neutralize a corrosion rift. Sok asked if his mission was to clear the rift, but Sihun said his job was to patrol the island, and if any other corrosion rifts appeared, he had to deal with them. The mission would start in a month, and Seok would be paid 5 million won up front, with a 15 million won bonus upon successful completion. Seok complained to Sihun that the pay was not at all attractive considering the extremely high risk of the job. Sihun told Seok to become stronger and more famous, and then more money would pour into his pockets. Sihun then asked for his decision, and as expected, he accepted the offer. Afterward, Sihun called her boss to tell him about Suk's craziness. Her boss asked who he was, and she explained that he was a civilian who had passed the selection round with his bare hands. The boss didn't think this was too crazy, but Sihun told him straight up that Suk had lasted almost 4 hours against her. Even so, the boss still thought Sok lasted that long because she was just toying with him. Sihun then reminded her boss that she was a veteran hunter with 10 years of experience, and all her skills were forged in hellish places. She emphasized that under normal circumstances, she could easily toy with Sok, but he had actually made her struggle for 4 hours. Sihun acknowledged Sok's toughness, asserting that she would probably never meet another monster like him again. The boss was tired of hearing her praise Sok, so he asked if the mission she gave him didn't require a hunter with actual combat experience. The man was worried that Sok might not be able to handle veteran hunters, even though he was quite talented. Sihun told her boss not to worry, as she had paired Sok with a reliable person, Sung-ah. The boss decided to trust Sihun's judgment, as she was the strategic brain of the entire guild. The boss then asked Sihun what she thought Sok would be like when he reached her level, and Sihun confidently replied that Sok would be more than capable of taking him down too. A month ago, Sok had received an order for a spear and a vial of elixir at his apartment. Elixirs were a type of medicine that hunters used in emergencies. It contained condensed mana, which was extremely useful for instant mana replenishment. When it comes to controlling mana, it's like drinking water from a water purifier. A person can control the mana in the air, store it in their body, and use it when needed. The elixir vial in his hand allowed him to do this in a short amount of time. However, Sok used mana in a completely different way. He skipped the storage process and directly absorbed and used mana from the atmosphere. The advantage of this was that there was no limit, as Sok used the vast source of mana in the air. Furthermore, during the process of absorbing and releasing mana, the mana circuits through which the flow passed would gradually become stronger, allowing for the use of larger amounts of mana. However, the only drawback was that until these mana circuits developed, the amount of power Siak could handle was quite small, making it difficult for him to unleash strong, damaging force in a short time. Sok decided to use a little elixir, as there was no more time to waste. He was sure he would get more accustomed to this new body after a month of training. Currently, the hunters were lining up to verify their identities before being allowed to enter the island. When Siok's identity was confirmed, the official informed him that he was assigned to Squad 8. Sok joined the rest of his team and remained silent while they chattered non-stop like parrots. Just then, he heard someone call his name. When he looked up, he realized it was Sunga. She was wearing a tank top that revealed a scar running down her shoulder. It turned out they were in the same squad, and Sunga proposed that they work together on this mission. Suk asked why he should agree to work with her, and she reminded him that he was stronger than her. Because of that, she believed she could learn from him. Suk teased her, saying his shoulders were about to fall off from embarrassment. Sunga's lack of a sense of humor surfaced again as she seriously asked if Suk's shoulder often dislocated. Siak remembered how she had literally raised her hand to surrender in their previous match, proving just how dull and humorless she was. A while later, the whole team was assembled, and the official summarized the mission objectives. Since there were new hunters on the team, clearly referring to Sok, he mentioned that corrosion rifts were classified as Level 1, Level 2, Level 3, and unclassified. The closer the rift was to Level 1, the higher the danger. He added that the first corrosion rift to appear in a specific area would be given the suffix Alpha. It turned out the current location of the Alpha corrosion rift on the island was a church to the north. However, he also stated that this rift was still unclassified because the corrosion would grow stronger over time. The official warned them not to get near the rift under any circumstances. He emphasized that their mission was to patrol the area to detect and neutralize any new corrosion rifts that might appear. A blonde guy on the team expressed surprise that they had to embark on a neutralization mission while being saddled with a rookie. Before he knew it, Sok found the whole team acting strangely towards him just because he was considered a rookie. Before departing, they were informed that the control room on the mainland was still operational, and they could make contact whenever they needed help. With the briefing over, the hunters were dispatched with wishes of good luck. As soon as they arrived on the island, the veteran hunters began to strategize. But Sok interjected and suggested they set up a base at Wagiesa Temple to operate from there. He showed them the temple's location on the map, but the veteran hunters couldn't believe they were being directed by a rookie. Furthermore, they wanted to know why he wanted to go to the temple. Sok explained that from there, they could observe their target area. Moreover, they could see the entire area directly from the peak. He also mentioned that they could use the old temple building as a shelter, which was basically the obvious thing to do. The veteran hunters immediately snapped at him, saying there were plenty of other places for them to stop. One guy even asked what the hell they were supposed to do if they got surrounded after climbing the mountain for nothing. Sok reminded them that they weren't fighting thousands of enemies, so there was no way they would get surrounded. Despite Sok's attempts to persuade them, the hunters flatly declared they had no reason to listen to someone as inexperienced as him. Sok was speechless and realized that Earth had idiots just like the other world. Since they had no intention of listening, Siak suggested they go their separate ways. Suk decisively left and headed straight for the temple, with Sunga following close behind. Surprisingly, the blonde guy from before also followed, making Suk wonder why he was tailing them. Sok called him by his name, Min Jae, and asked why he was following. Min Jae boasted that he was following to keep an eye on them since they were both rookies. Sok thanked Min Jae for his concern. He was genuinely surprised that there was at least one decent person on the team. Suddenly, Seok stopped and told the other two to halt as well. He signaled for them to keep quiet and urged Min Jae to peek out from behind their cover. To their surprise, there were monsters blocking the path. He immediately suggested taking another route, as there were at least 50 monsters up ahead. Sok then asked Min Jae what his unique skill was. This question confused Min Jae, as he couldn't believe Sok intended to fight the monsters. Sok retorted that hunters fighting monsters was a perfectly normal thing, then repeated his question about his skill. Min Jae replied that it was fire, and when Sok asked which skill he was most confident with, Min Jae revealed it was fireball. Sok was pleased to hear that. He told Min Jae to prepare to attack the monsters on his signal. Min Jae vehemently objected, saying it was too reckless as they only had 3 people against 50 monsters. He added that this was their first mission, and the right thing to do was to radio the other hunters while they still had the chance. Seok calmly replied that the others wouldn't make it in time. Unlike their group, which headed straight from Hwagyesa Temple, the others were searching along the coastline. Suk argued that calling the other hunters was the reckless move, as there was no guarantee that those who heard the radio call would show up. Furthermore, the monsters could scatter while they waited, becoming a threat to the other hunters. Deep down, Min-jae knew Suk was right. The other hunters might not come right away, especially after their earlier disagreement. Sok stated bluntly that their only option now was to deal with the monsters themselves. Although the situation seemed unfavorable, Sok said what they needed to do was launch a surprise attack. Since there wasn't much time, Seok began to draw a plan in the sand. He told Min-jae he would be the first to attack the center with a fireball, while he would block the two flanks. From the plan Sok laid out, Min-jae was completely overwhelmed, unable to believe Sok had calculated every scenario as if he were used to such things. As soon as Sok finished explaining, Min-jae sprang into action and launched a fireball straight into the horde of monsters. The attack created a huge explosion, incinerating the monsters it hit. Min-jae fell back and said it would take a while before he could use another fireball. Sok stepped up to continue the assault, telling Min-jae to fire another fireball as soon as he was ready. Min-jae confirmed the order, while Sok directly confronted the enemies unaffected by the flames, cutting them down as easily as flipping his hand. Since Suk was someone who always valued efficiency in missions, he always believed in a clear division of roles. He planned to hold off the horde until the next fireball was ready, but he knew for sure he couldn't stop all of them by himself. Basically, that's why the division of roles was so important. Any monster that managed to get past Seok's attack was taken down by Sung-ah, who was positioned behind him. A moment later, Min-jae informed Sok that he was ready to fire the next fireball. Sok immediately got out of the way, making room for Min-jae to land another critical blow on the enemy. Soon, they had wiped out all the enemies. And while Sok was praising them for a job well done, Min-jae suddenly pulled out a gun, making Sok jump in fright. Before they could have a heart attack, Min-jae urged the two to stand aside, and Sok breathed a sigh of relief, thinking Min-jae was about to shoot him in the ass. Sok then planted a microchip into one of the corpses. He revealed that once the mission was over and the area was secured, the junk dealer he had a contract with would come to collect the corpses. Sok was completely clueless about the term junk dealer that he had just mentioned, and Min-jae explained that it was very difficult for them to recover the loot from monster corpses on their own. Shipping them would grant the junk dealers permission to come after the mission was over to collect anything of value. Once collected, they would appraise the items, sell them, and then split the profits. The junk dealers would take a commission based on the contract, and the rest would go to the hunter who planted the chip. Suk asked Min-jae if the junk dealers could be trusted, and he replied that's why finding a reputable one to sign a contract with was so important. Min-jae then praised Sok profusely, saying he was amazing because he never imagined the three of them could take down 50 monsters. Suddenly, Sok's keen intuition told him something was wrong. Without hesitation, he grabbed Min-jae and lunged forward to dodge a surprise attack from a giant monster that had been stalking them. Luckily, Min-jae escaped without a scratch. He was stunned and asked what had just attacked them. Sok looked closer at the monster and said it was a mid-tier boss type. Sok was extremely surprised by its appearance, making him wonder if this was the boss leading the horde they had just wiped out. Sok also realized this one was no pushover. The amount of mana radiating from it was on a completely different level compared to the ones they had just fought. Without hesitation, he told the other two to fall back so he could handle the monster himself. Min-jae and Sung-ah thought they should support him by executing a pincer maneuver, but Sok yelled at them to get back, unless they wanted to go home in body bags. The seriousness in Sok's voice immediately made them retreat. Deep down, Sok had already analyzed the situation and knew it was best for him to deal with the monster alone. With no one to get in his way, he realized he could freely use his paradox flame on the monster. As soon as Suk was ready, he provoked the monster, challenging it to come at him. A while later, Min-jae asked Sung-ah if they were going to help Suk, as he seemed to be in trouble. Sung-ah told him it wasn't necessary. Although Suk looked like he was struggling, he hadn't actually been hit once since the fight began. Furthermore, the attacks Suk was easily dodging were ones that would have given her immense trouble. Basically, Seok was dodging and attacking at the same time. Sung-ah also noticed that every time Sok's spear landed a hit, a black flame erupted, making her wonder what kind of power it was. The more the fire blazed, the slower the monster became. At first it seemed like Suk was having a hard time, but it turned out he was basically just toying with the monster. Sung-ah was completely stunned, unable to believe Suk was a rookie hunter just like her. After playing around enough, Sok did something completely unexpected by tossing his spear into the air. The monster was charging towards him at full speed. Sung-ah was horrified, certain the monster was about to take him down. But just as the monster got close to Seok, it was pinned down and crushed by the spear falling from above. Sok didn't even flinch, showing he was completely confident in his skills. He praised the monster for still being able to move despite having all its strength burned away. Then, Seok decided it was time to finish it. Min-jae was completely blown away by what he had just witnessed, as there was no way Sok could have so easily defeated such a heavyweight monster. After finishing off the monster, Sok asked Min-jae if it was normal for a monster with such power to appear on the island. Min-jae replied that he was wondering the same thing, as this monster wasn't even a product of the corrosion rift. Min-jae said this could only happen if they were entering a rift that was at least level 3. At this point, Sok remembered that during the mission briefing, he heard the Alpha Corrosion Rift was still unclassified. In that case, Sok told the two of them that the Alpha Corrosion Rift on the island had escalated to level 3. Sung-ah didn't want to believe it, as the briefing information was completely different, but Sok urged her to think things through logically. He told her there was no other way to explain the current situation if the rift wasn't level 3. Min-jae panicked upon hearing this, as the difference between an unclassified rift and a level 3 rift was night and day. Min-jae revealed that if this was true, the other hunters were in danger, and they might not even survive to return. Min-jae immediately suggested they go rescue the other hunters, as with Sok's skills, they still had a chance. However, Sok flatly refused the offer, saying he wasn't interested. Min-jae asked why he refused, and Sok made it clear that there was no way he could save all the hunters on this island by himself. He reminded Min-jae that he was only human and had his own limits. He also reminded them that their mission was not to rescue hunters in distress, but to identify and eliminate any new corrosion rifts that appeared. Furthermore, he told them the obvious fact that not everyone would survive. It was a harsh part of this job. Sung-ah then asked what Sok would do if he were in the other hunter's situation. Sok didn't understand what she was implying, and she said bluntly that he would be begging to be saved too. In a firm tone, Sok told them he wasn't refusing because he was incapable of understanding human emotions. He told them he was just talking about the outcome, because in this world, some deaths are unavoidable. He told them that once faced with such deaths, it was normal for people to lose their lives. Suk advised them not to act on emotion, because with that mindset, they wouldn't survive in this cruel world. That night, they reached the temple. After searching around the temple, Suk told the two of them that the building was safe. Min-jae said it was lucky they could see the other hunters' positions thanks to their lights. However, Sok didn't entirely agree, as using lights was clearly an invitation for enemies to come. He knew they could handle ordinary monsters, but he was worried that a stronger monster like the one from before might appear again. Sok then decided to send a warning to the other hunters that there was a possibility the rift had escalated to level 3. He urged them to limit their use of lights, as it could be dangerous for them. Sok then asked Min-jae if the other monsters would disappear if the rift's core was destroyed, and Min-jae confirmed it. He told Sok that without the energy radiating from the rift, the corrosion zone would disappear. As soon as he heard this, Seok concluded that his mission was very simple: destroy the corrosion rift. Late that night, when the other two were fast asleep, Sok prepared to leave. Before he left, he set up an alarm device that would go off if monsters approached. Sok believed he could go and come back without having to worry about them. Crossing the forest, Sok was glad he had confirmed the location of the Alpha Corrosion Rift during the briefing. Sok had thought things would be easy, but he had spoken too soon. He ran into another boss-level monster that looked even more terrifying than the one he had defeated earlier. Back at the Hunter Association's Situation Room, they were in a panic because they had lost the signal of several hunters from Team 5, and these individuals were presumed dead. On top of that, there were reports that the monsters were moving in an organized manner, and casualties had been confirmed in Team 3. The team leader shouted in frustration, not understanding what the problem was, as the hunters were supposed to be investigating an unclassified corrosion rift. In a panic, the team leader declared a state of emergency, reporting to his superiors that they would need reinforcements. He requested they activate the emergency communication network and send an urgent cooperation request to all hunters in the vicinity. As they were doing that, he received a notification that someone was approaching the Alpha Corrosion Rift. The team leader was horrified to hear this and told his subordinate to contact that person and tell them to stop immediately. An employee received a report that the hunter heading towards the Alpha Corrosion Rift was Sok from Team 8. The team leader ordered a connection to Sok's terminal to immediately confirm he was still alive. The team leader was very surprised to see that Sok was the first to grasp the situation, as the rift's level up was an unprecedented event. He realized that since Sok was the only one heading towards the Alpha Rift, it basically proved he was the only one with the answer. By the time they contacted Sok, he was already engaged in battle with the terrifying beast he had just encountered. Sok yelled at the people in the control room, calling them crazy for not properly investigating whether this was truly an unclassified corrosion rift. Sok cursed them out with all sorts of foul language, making the staff consider muting him. While fleeing from the beast, Sok realized that his paradox flame wasn't strong enough to take it down. This meant he had to drain the beast's blood with the paradox flame and then finish it off with his spear. However, Seok was having a problem. He had absorbed too much mana from the island when facing the mid-sized boss earlier. This made his paradox flame a bit weak. Since he couldn't leave the island, Sok decided to find a place where he could absorb mana. After a few minutes of running around, he finally found what he was looking for, the Alpha Rift itself. Without hesitation, Seok charged straight into the rift, simultaneously provoking the beast, telling it to follow him because he had something he needed to confirm. Back in the situation room, they were stunned when Sok's GPS signal suddenly disappeared, and they realized he had entered the Alpha Corrosion Rift. As soon as he was inside the rift, Seok was surprised by how clean it was. Furthermore, it was quite spacious, making Sok wonder how large level 1 and level 2 rifts would be if an unclassified one was already this big. Just then, the boss level monster appeared, and Sok knew it was time to end their battle. Sok had always had one problem with the paradox flame. It spread to all living creatures except for him. The flame had the potential to burn allies, and sometimes it would even flare up to a point where he couldn't control it. This was the only weakness of the skill, but if he was fighting alone, it wasn't really a weakness, as he could fight any way he wanted. Sok swung his weapon at the monster, unleashing a massive wave of fire towards it while absorbing mana into every corner of his body. This expanded his mana circuits, making him even stronger. And a deep breath showed Sok what he had been missing all this time. Just then, the monster roared, and Sok immediately understood what it was about to do. Soon after, other monsters appeared, and Seok wasn't surprised at all. He knew the monster was calling for reinforcements with its piercing scream. Even so, Seok told the boss monster that the strength in numbers tactic was useless. Sok created a barrier of fire around himself, sweeping through the monsters while telling them he was stronger now, though not yet as strong as he was in the other world. According to Minjae, the core of the rift would be the strongest monster here. Suddenly, Seok was attacked from behind by a monster that could speak, but he managed to dodge the blow. When he turned around, he saw a hideous monster staring at him. Seok was quite surprised that this was an intelligent monster, as it could speak and even waited for his paradox flame to die down before revealing itself. Looking closer, he realized the monster standing before him was the core of the rift. With his current power level, Seok believed he could unleash a 4-hit combo chain. And without hesitation, he struck. He launched his spear towards the monster, but it used its own spear to block it. However, the force from the spear continued to press down on the sword, and Seok immediately activated his dual orbit spear skill. Suddenly, the spear released a massive surge of energy, shattering the monster's spear and piercing through its body, unleashing a terrifying explosion that destroyed the monster's body. It turned out the dual orbit spear was a blue trajectory created along the path of his slash. This trajectory mimicked the first attack but repeated it 4 times. Basically, it was a skill that repeated 4 attacks in succession. and if that blue trajectory attacked a beat later, it would complete an extremely dangerous and completely unavoidable two-stage wind cycle. At that moment, the monster charged towards Sok, ready to take him down. However, this was its mistake, as the spear arrived at that exact moment. Sok grabbed the spear and unleashed a powerful blow, cleaving the monster in two, before delivering the finishing blow, shattering the enemy's body. Surprisingly, after defeating the monster, it didn't disappear. Instead, Sok received a box. Meanwhile, the people in the control room were still in a panic, believing it was all over as the monsters continued to spread. The team was terrified, staring and saying that only a miracle could save them, as all the hunters would be wiped out because they had rejected his request for reinforcements. The team leader received a notification that Sok, who had just entered the rift, had sent a message. The team leader requested the mission details, and they displayed it on the main screen. To their astonishment, Sok announced that the Alpha Corrosion Rift had been dealt with. Just as Sok said, they began to receive signals indicating the rift had disappeared, and all the monsters also started to vanish. The team leader was stunned to hear this news, as it was nothing short of the miracle he had just prayed for, but he wondered how Seok had done it. A few moments earlier, Sung-ah and Min-jae found themselves surrounded by a horde of monsters. With no sign of Sok, Min-jae asked Sung-ah if they had any chance of surviving and escaping. Sung-ah realized he had reached his limit, and even she didn't know how much longer she could hold on. One of the monsters lunged at them. Sung-ah prepared to fight, but she realized a grim truth. She had reached her limit, and her legs couldn't move anymore. Sung-ah squeezed her eyes shut, waiting for death to come. In a surprising turn of events, Sok had defeated the Rift Core at that very moment, and the monsters began to disappear. Later, Seok returned to the hunter assembly point on the island and realized many people were injured. He guessed that the corrosion creatures had gone on a rampage while he was away. The other hunters who had previously refused to cooperate with Seok had all received news that he was the one who had single-handedly cleared the rift. They were all stunned and couldn't believe it, because a level 3 rift was not something a rookie could handle on their own. Suk quickly found his teammates, and Min-jae expressed his shock upon learning that Suk had dealt with the rift all by himself. Suk then told Min-jae that deep down, he wanted to do the right thing. Suk had decided to play the good guy since everything had turned out well. They were still talking when an official appeared. He introduced himself to Sok as Bae Jong-tae from the Korea Management Corporation. It seemed he was the director of the 3rd branch of North Incheon Province. Bae told Seok that the mayor wanted to see him. A while later, Sok arrived at the mayor's office in the pouring rain, but he didn't mind much, as he wanted to renegotiate his reward. Upon arriving at the building, he was greeted by Lee Pyo-jae, the communications and liaison officer. On the way to the mayor's office, Pyo-jae told Sok that the mayor had been eagerly awaiting this meeting, revealing how shocked he was when he received the report from the island. It turned out the mayor had canceled his entire schedule after receiving the report. Sok told him he shouldn't have done that, as he hadn't even done anything that impressive. Pyo-jae told Sok not to say that, because a rookie hunter single-handedly destroying a level 3 corrosion rift was something that hadn't happened since the first hunters were still active. Sok was surprised to learn that someone had done this before, and he believed that person must be very formidable. Not long after, they arrived at the mayor's office. Mayor Park Jae-hyun welcomed Seok. He apologized for calling him in such bad weather. Then, Jae-hyun told Sok to sit down while he sent Pyo-jae to get them coffee. When it was just the two of them, Jae-hyun praised him, saying he had done a great service for the country. He admitted the island had been a thorny issue, as their budget was limited, making it difficult to hire an expensive guild. Sok replied that he was pretty sure the man was very happy the problem had been solved for a relatively cheap price. Jae-hyun confirmed this and asked Sok if it was true this was his first mission. Sok said yes. The mayor shot up, full of excitement, saying he was very proud of Sok because his first steps were in Incheon. He started rambling about how Korea was the safest country in the world, making Sok wonder what was wrong with this guy all of a sudden. The mayor continued, saying that Incheon was one of the country's key locations, as it was a commercial hub. Furthermore, the Free Economic Zone project was attracting many foreign investors. In fact, there were so many investments that it was hard to choose one. The mayor told Sok that huge amounts of capital were flowing into Incheon's international cities. Then, the mayor told Sok that he would provide all possible support to make his life as a hunter easier. On the way to the mayor's office, Bae had asked Sok what his purpose was for being a hunter. Sok used the analogy that there always had to be someone there to unclog a toilet. Hearing this, Bae told Sok he was pretty sure he would become famous and extremely popular. He also knew companies would start begging him to do commercials for them, and he might even be sought after for popular TV shows. Sok realized Bae was worried he would change because of fame, and Bae confirmed it. Bae said there were many cases of promising hunters getting drunk on fame and fortune, causing them to lose their sense of duty. He said this was not surprising, as it was only natural. He added that the only safe place was Korea, and it was called the last remaining sanctuary on Earth. Bae told him that what he had achieved was incredible, which meant many people would be watching him with great interest. Bae told Sok that he hoped he would continue to be a symbol of hope. Now Sok was in the mayor's office. He realized this mayor was basically laying everything out without beating around the bush. However, he knew the mayor would soon realize he wasn't someone easily swayed by such things. Sok had lived too long and endured countless hardships, so all of this meant nothing to him. Sok then asked the mayor what he wanted from him, as there was no reason he would support him for free. Sok took the initiative, telling the mayor he was pretty sure he was looking to boost his approval ratings for re-election. The mayor was surprised by Seok's sharpness, and he simply replied that one could find everything on their phone. The mayor was stunned by Sok's knowledge and asked if he didn't really need approval from City Hall. It turned out the mayor was right, because he needed his permission to participate in missions since he was just a rookie. Sok realized that if the mayor played his cards right, he could boast that Sok was a talent he himself had discovered in Incheon. The mayor then told Sok that he always maintained relationships with many domestic and foreign companies. He tapped the coffee packet on the table, saying the model who advertised for this brand was about to have her contract expire. He believed they should replace her face with Sok's. He was about to continue his nonsense when Sok slammed his coffee cup down, asking the mayor if he thought he was some cheap kind of person. The mayor was confused, and Sok mentioned that with the way the world was going, it seemed humanity needed someone who could change this gloomy atmosphere. He let the mayor know that if he continued as a hunter, he could easily achieve everything he was promising. Sok stood up, about to leave, while the mayor tried to persuade him, saying he could provide him with safe and high-paying missions. Sok walked away, leaving a comment that his offers were garbage, and he could give them to his instant coffee model. Meanwhile, a strange man was receiving a report that their experiment on the island had failed, all thanks to the interference of Seok. They had obtained footage from his selection tournament match, and the mysterious man was curious about the black flame surrounding his body. Since the rankings were established, it turned out that the first of every month was always when the rankings were updated, and the whole country always looked forward to it. People were still waiting as usual because they wanted to know who would be the #1 hunter. Even though the rankings didn't change much, it was still a source of entertainment for the public. Sihun was also very interested in the rankings because she wanted to know if Seok was on it. In the end, things turned out completely different. In 10th place was Sihun, while 5th place belonged to Kim Jae-hyun. Jo Yu-rim was in 3rd place, while Kang Tae-seo took 2nd. And as for the #1 spot, it turned out to be none other than Sok. This ultimately led to a huge press conference for him where he was expected to answer questions. All eyes were on Sok because he was just a rookie and had cleared a level 3 dungeon. Sok was bombarded with countless questions about how he managed to conquer the dungeon, and after many questions, Seok finally requested one last question. A reporter asked what his goal and determination were. He assured them that he would do his best. Afterward, Sok was invited by the association chairman, Moon, for a tour. He took him to what used to be Gonjiam Prison. There was a giant crater in the ground at the former site of the prison. Moon told him that what he was looking at was the fate of many nations. Apparently, most countries had lost their administrative capabilities after the corrosion rifts appeared. However, Korea had become a successful defensive power, and had even made technological advancements. He revealed that the helicopter they were in was part of the country's technological strength, as it ran on magical energy and was completely soundproofed from the outside. Sok asked Moon if this was the end for countries that couldn't handle the rifts, and Moon replied yes, revealing that many capitals had disappeared after the corrosion rifts appeared. Moon suggested they get closer for a better look. And as they moved closer to the crater, he mentioned that there were 8 of the most dangerous corrosion rifts in the world, and Ganjiam Prison was one of them. It turned out Ganjiam Prison had formed 13 years ago, spreading into the city without any signs or warnings. Although there were some survivors, they were still swept away as the entire area turned into a corrosion zone. In just a few days, the entire city had vanished without a trace. As they left the scene, Moon told Sok that the world's power balance hadn't changed much, but the central powers had weakened drastically. Deep down, Seok was glad to know all this information, but at the same time he didn't understand why he had to come all the way to the scene just to hear it. Then, Moon revealed that Hyun of the Taebaek Guild had come to see him a few days ago, and it seemed he was going crazy because Seok wouldn't join his guild. He even asked for Sok's whereabouts, but Moon reassured Sok that he hadn't revealed it, as it was clearly personal information. Moon told Sok that the Taebaek Guild had an ideology centered around the survival of the fittest, and if Sok didn't do as they wished, they might try to subdue him by force. Sok couldn't believe they would go that far, but at the same time he was worried that he couldn't face Hyun at the moment. Then, Moon mentioned the fact that Seok seemed like someone who didn't want to be involved with any guild, so he could be free to do as he pleased, and Seok confirmed it. Moon told Sok he had to raise his standards if he wanted to stop TBS from hunting him. He mentioned there were ways to do this, and one of them was to accept a mission from the association chairman. The moment Sok heard this, he wasn't surprised, as he knew the chairman had a hidden motive behind all this. Sok immediately asked the old man what he wanted, as he was pretty sure he wouldn't just give him a mission for free. Moon told Seok that all he wanted was for him to remember that he had helped him. Then, he handed him an envelope, telling him to check the contents. Sok believed he had hit the jackpot, as this was a deal from the association chairman, which wasn't a bad way to build a reputation. Sok asked the old man what he had to do, and the old man revealed that he was expected to escort a cargo ship from Busan to the city of Nanning. He mentioned that transportation was not easy these days, all thanks to the corrosion rifts appearing everywhere. Seok then checked the list of things he would have to escort and realized they were all luxury items, including a car. Sok was extremely surprised by this and expressed his astonishment at what people still considered necessities. Moon told him that everything on the list was a necessity for some people. Moon hoped Sok would understand, but Sok said he didn't, because he couldn't see the need for these things in a country where the government had collapsed. Moon said that many countries might be collapsing due to the rifts, but that didn't mean international politics had become obsolete. Sok immediately realized that this mission was aimed at maintaining international relations. Since that was the case, Sok unbuckled his seatbelt and told the old man he had no interest in this mission. Moon was shocked to hear that, and he informed Sok that the Korean government took this mission very seriously. Even so, Sok still told Moon he wasn't interested. Sok told the old man it would be foolish for him to get involved in international politics. The old man was furious when Seok rejected his offer, and he tried to remind him that he was just a newly debuted hunter, but Seok couldn't care less as he threw the mission papers out of the helicopter. Seok also opened the door, thanked the old man for the ride, but told him he would swim back to Seoul on his own. Without a moment's hesitation, Sok leaped out of the helicopter and landed in the water below, leaving the old man in a state of utter shock. A while later, Sok emerged at Incheon Airport, and he casually climbed out of the water. He ran into a port worker, and the two of them naturally greeted each other as if nothing had happened. Since he might be threatened in the future, Sok decided the first thing he had to do was increase his own strength. He planned to do this by taking on the most challenging missions so he could become a figure of such stature that he would never be swayed by anyone again. Sok scrolled through his phone and quickly found a mission that seemed to be exactly what he wanted. It was a mission to rescue kidnapped victims on Tsushima Island. And the expected difficulty rating was level 2. Sok took a deep breath and realized he would be busy for a while. According to the report, on September 3rd, fishermen from Jeoj and Tongyang Islands went out to sea. But the waters that day were unusual, as corrosion creatures nesting on Tsushima Island appeared and kidnapped them as prey. According to a survivor who had just managed to escape, the kidnapped fishermen were still alive. This mission required Seok to go to Tsushima Island to rescue the captured hostages and destroy the corrosion rift. The reward was 55 million won, and Sok knew that all of it would be his if he completed the mission alone. Furthermore, he would be hailed as a hero if he could solve this on his own. Although this challenge was worth taking, Sok still remembered what they had said about the levels and the creatures that inhabited them. It was rumored that a level 3 corrosion rift had the destructive power of a tank, but a creature in a level 2 rift was at the level of a natural disaster. As for level 1, the entire country would have to mobilize just to have a hope of taking one down. He knew he could handle a level 3 rift thanks to his Paradox Flame, but he wondered if he could take on a level 2 by himself. To be safe, he realized he might need a capable person, but the problem was finding someone willing to take a request from a civilian. He wondered if anyone could do it. And then he remembered someone. Soon after, Sok and his partner, none other than Sung-ah, boarded the ship heading towards their destination. Sung-ah asked when they would arrive, and he replied in about an hour. He urged her to recover her stamina before they got there, because this battle would be even more brutal than the last one. While Sok was busy saying that, Sung-ah was more curious about the metal pad on his shoulder. She asked him about it because it looked like a limited edition, which made her wonder how he got it. Sok started to get tired of her nagging. He had to tell her that the junk dealer he signed a contract with had given it to him. Sung-ah was extremely surprised because the place she signed with had never given her anything useful. Sok teased her, saying the level of expectation was different because he was a promising rookie who had single-handedly dealt with a level 3 rift. Unlike her, just a weak newbie with only the title of Academy Valedictorian. Sok noticed her cold expression and knew she felt insulted, but he used it to motivate her to become stronger and more famous so she wouldn't be humiliated again. A few days earlier, Sok had contacted Sung-ah to tell her he needed a teammate. At first, Sung-ah was a bit hesitant because they had almost died in a level 3 rift. And now, Sok was inviting her to join a level 2 rift. Sok managed to convince her by asking if she wanted to become stronger. He assured her that he could help her become much stronger than she currently was. It turned out Sung-ah also had personal reasons for wanting to become stronger, and she was willing to jump into hell if it helped her achieve her goal. A moment later, the alarm on the ship went off. It warned of an unidentified object ahead. Soon, they encountered 5 ships. Sok was still calculating his next move when he suddenly saw Sung-ah floating in the air, which left him astonished. Sung-ah was surprised to see that Sok couldn't do it. Her face turned red with excitement as she finally found something Sok couldn't do. She burst out laughing, mocking Sok because he couldn't do this trick. To move easily, Sung-ah had to carry Sok on her back. As they got closer to the ships, Sok told Sung-ah to handle the nearest one. Sung-ah asked why, and he revealed that the ones in the back seemed more dangerous than the ones nearby. Sung-ah acknowledged the order, but as she approached the ship, she noticed the shape of a person. But Sok told her to look again, because what she was seeing was not human. Sok landed on the ship he wanted to clear, and just as expected, he found humans who had been transformed on board. These people had lost all their humanity and had become extremely aggressive. Sung-ah landed on the ship with a really proud thud, accidentally attracting the attention of the monsters. The monsters attacked, and Sok easily cleared the first wave. From this, he realized they were just low-level monsters. He thought Sung-ah would also take them down easily, but to his surprise, she went all out to deal with these weak monsters. Sok immediately called her name to warn her, reminding her that she was using too much mana. He told her that if she continued like this, she would soon run out of mana. He said that at her current level, she only needed a small amount of mana. Sung-ah then remembered his promise to train her to become stronger. Following Sok's instructions, Sung-ah reduced her firepower, but Sok still said it was too much. Because the life of the weak is a tragedy, Sung-ah had decided she would never be weak again. While crushing her enemies, Sung-ah confidently reaffirmed her desire to become even stronger. A while later, Sung-ah had cleared out the monsters. She turned to ask Sok if it was all over. Sok told her he had already taken care of the remaining boats. Sung-ah reluctantly thanked Sok, saying she had learned a lot from his advice. Sok teased her, saying she didn't need to thank him because the world was full of people who wouldn't learn, even if it was handed to them on a silver platter. Sung-ah honestly confessed that this was the first time someone had advised her on this, which greatly surprised Seok. He asked her what she had been taught at the academy. She revealed that because she picked up everything so quickly, they never bothered to teach her the basics. Sok teased her again, asking if she thought she would be stronger than him if he kept teaching her like this. With teary eyes, she told Sok that she hadn't even surpassed a single teacher. Sok was surprised to see her so emotional. He casually comforted her, saying she didn't need to worry because that wouldn't happen with him. He would make sure she had to look up to him for the rest of her life. As they prepared to go deeper, the sailors informed Sok and Sunga that they would stay behind on guard, just in case. Before setting off, Seok told Sunga that according to the survivor, the hostages were at the temple. Sunga informed Sok that there were 2 temples on the island, Gaizin Temple and Adazumi Temple. Based on the distance, Sok believed Gaizin Temple would be their first destination, and Sunga said they could walk there in a few hours. Sok knew walking wasn't a problem, but the trouble would be when they returned. They would have to bring 15 hostages with them, according to the survivor's report. Furthermore, Seok could feel a sinister mana flow behind the fog, and he was sure the corrosion creatures on the island would chase them relentlessly. Sok was still thinking of an escape route when he suddenly spotted a vehicle in the distance, and everything immediately became clear. He asked Sunga if she was a good driver, and Sunga confidently replied yes. A moment later, Sok was begging for his life because Sunga was driving the vehicle as if it were the end of the world. She teased Sok, telling him to drive himself if he didn't like her driving. Sok told her to forget it, then jumped onto the roof of the vehicle, ready to face the monsters chasing them. Sok pulled out a rope dart and threw it towards the monsters. The attack wiped out a group of monsters, and when he pulled it back, the damage was just as devastating. Just then, Sok spotted monsters approaching from the left. He immediately shouted a warning to Sunga. Sunga showed her crazy driving skills, swerving with the most dangerous turns to shake off the monsters. Sunga drove the bus on 2 wheels to lose the monsters, and it was at this moment that Sok wished he were the one driving. As they sped through the deserted roads, the monsters stayed hot on their trail, swarming them like ants on sugar. Not long after, they arrived. Sunga worriedly mentioned the horde of monsters behind them, but Seok told her not to worry because he would handle them. Sunga drove the bus into the temple, and Sok immediately unleashed his paradox flame to block the entrance, incinerating any monster that dared to get close. A moment later, they found the hostages tied up. Sunga stepped forward to introduce herself, but instead of being happy to be rescued, the hostages started acting very strangely. Tears streamed down their faces as they urged Sunga to run away, which made her wonder why she was being shooed away. She was unaware that a giant samurai monster had appeared right behind her, ready to cut her down. Luckily, Sok managed to block the samurai's attack. He told Sunga to get the survivors onto the bus while he dealt with him personally. A fierce battle immediately broke out between the samurai and Sok. The samurai towered over him as he tried to slash Seok, but despite the height difference, Seok didn't flinch. Suddenly, Sunga appeared out of nowhere and rammed the bus straight into the samurai, knocking him to the ground. With the samurai down, Sok praised Sunga's quick thinking, but she just urged him to get on the bus. In the end, Sok had to cling to the roof of the bus while the hostages were safely seated inside. The journey was going smoothly, until they realized a horde of monsters was ambushing them up ahead. Sok also realized the samurai was still alive despite being hit by the bus. With a massive horde of monsters blocking their path, Sok told Sunga to give him her sword. Sunga was surprised to hear this, as asking a swordsman to hand over their sword was a grave insult. Sok then asked her what she prioritized more, her own honor or the lives of the hostages. Sunga had no choice but to hand over the sword, and Sok grabbed it, ready to go wild. Surprisingly, there was a strange device on his wrist, and although Sok didn't want to use it too soon, he realized he had no other choice now. It turned out the gauntlet was in the box he had received on the island after defeating the rift's core. It wasn't an ordinary gauntlet, as it could absorb mana from the surrounding environment. When he first saw it, Seok thought it was just for replenishing the user's mana. However, for Sok, it was much more than that. It turned out the gauntlet's maximum mana capacity only lasted for 5 minutes, but during those 5 minutes, he possessed enough power to rival Sihun. Facing the horde of monsters trying to block their path, Seok brandished his spear and sword, ready to unleash a devastating blow. Sok launched an overwhelming attack towards the monsters, taking them all down in a single slash. Sung-ah was stunned and couldn't believe her eyes, not understanding what had just happened right in front of her. Since the path was clear, Seok told Sung-ah to drive straight to the port without looking back. As they continued on their way, Seok was surprised to find that the corrupted monsters kept appearing endlessly. They were relentlessly pursuing them. Sung-ah told Sok it would be better to go out and deal with the monsters, as the bus had reached its limit. However, Seok told her to keep driving, and just then, they passed through a strange barrier that suddenly stopped the monsters on the other side. All the monsters struggled, unable to cross the barrier. While the bus easily drove away, Sung-ah was completely astonished. She looked around to figure out why the monsters had suddenly stopped following them. She spotted a glowing symbol on the wall, which made her wonder if it was because of that symbol. Sung-ah remembered that before they left, Sok had carved that symbol on the wall, saying it was a protective formation. Sung-ah had asked him what it was, and he replied that it was a method to ward off monsters. Sung-ah curiously asked where he had learned it, but Sok said that even if he told her, she would never understand. The simple reason was that he had learned this skill while he was in the other world. Back in the present, Sung-ah asked Sok if that method could repel all types of monsters, but Sok said no. He told her that this barrier had no effect on truly powerful monsters. Just as Sok finished speaking to Sung-ah, the samurai walked through the barrier as if it were nothing. The samurai's right eye began to glow, and a red laser beam shot out, closely following the bus. Sung-ah immediately recognized this move and said it was called the Mind's Eye. Seok was a bit confused, but he was certain that the atmosphere around them had become grim. However, he didn't feel any fear. Instead, he suddenly noticed Sung-ah was trembling because of this. Sung-ah said that the Mind's Eye was the ability to predict an opponent's attacks. She revealed that even for seasoned masters, this was an extremely difficult technique. Seeing Sung-ah trembling like that, Sok advised her not to be afraid, because skills like the Mind's Eye were just a scam. Seok then told Sung-ah to watch closely, as he was about to teach her how to deal with situations like this. Seok's eyes began to glow, and suddenly, the samurai started to feel fear, causing him to panic and swing his weapon at empty air. Sok calmly walked towards the samurai, telling Sung-ah that this skill was something that could be achieved through experience. Basically, this technique reacted to killing intent or fear. Since the samurai couldn't sense that, he just stood there trying to look dangerous. Sok let Sung-ah know that some skills like Mind's Eye, Sword Heart, and even the state of No Self were all cut from the same cloth. Sok walked up to the samurai without omitting any killing intent, and he easily defeated him with just one move. The samurai shattered before Seok's attack, and Seok nonchalantly told Sung-ah that all the techniques he had just mentioned were nothing special. He said that the illusion called enlightenment was very dangerous because people were easily excited by a fancy name and then decided not to progress further. Sok let Sung-ah know that the important things on the battlefield didn't need a special name. Sok revealed that he could confidently say this because he himself had sacrificed a lot to escape that trap. Seok told Sung-ah that the samurai was actually strong because he had survived being hit by a bus. But unfortunately, the ultimate move he relied on was nothing more than the Mind's Eye. After hearing these words, Sung-ah fell into a state of self-reflection. She asked herself what she had achieved in this conquest. Sung-ah immediately realized that she couldn't learn the way she wanted with half-hearted determination. Because there was a precious goal to pursue, she humbly begged Sok this time to truly teach her. Sok was surprised by her request, as he had been teaching her all along, but Sung-ah said what she needed was direct guidance, not just advice. Sung-ah said she had realized how weak she was, and she needed to get strong, fast. Sok asked her why, and she revealed that she wanted to personally finish off the collapse. It turned out the collapse was one of the 8 worst corrupted rifts in the world, and it was famous for swallowing the Himalayas in a single breath. Sok knew her goal was bigger than usual, so he asked if she was doing it for revenge. Sung-ah confirmed this, saying she was doing it to avenge her family. She then pulled out a card, telling Sok she wasn't asking him to teach her for free. Sok checked the card and realized it belonged to the Key Group, with a market capitalization of 257 billion won. Sung-ah said it was the corporation owned by her family, and Sok was shocked to learn Sung-ah was the heiress of a chaebol family. She said the company's chairman was her grandfather, but she had given up the succession race. Sok realized Sung-ah might get drawn back into the succession battle if she's shown as a hunter. Suk then asked what exactly she wanted, and Sung-ah begged him to make her the best. In return, she promised to supply him with elixirs. She told him she would get him extremely rare items, such as elixirs that weren't available through normal distribution channels. Since Sok also wanted to get stronger, Sung-ah told him that would become a reality thanks to the elixirs she would provide. Sok realized Sung-ah wouldn't even believe him if he said he had already reached the state she desired long ago. The main reason he was striving to get stronger was to return the Earth to its original state. Sok then shook Sung-ah's hand to confirm their deal was made. He gave her a list of things he wanted and suggested they take the hostages to the hospital first. After taking the hostages to the hospital, Sung-ah asked the doctor how long it would take for them to recover. Since there were 7 patients suffering from malnutrition, the doctor told them it would take at least a week before they could talk. The doctor assured them they would be the first to know when the hostages woke up, so for now, it was imperative to let them rest. Sok agreed with the doctor. He called Sung-ah to follow him, as their training would begin immediately. Upon arriving at a place where they could train, Sok decided to ask Sung-ah a question before they started. He asked if she thought she could dodge his spear if he swung it with all his strength. Sung-ah nervously replied that it would be very difficult, as the power gap between them was too large. However, Seok told her that she actually could dodge it if she pushed all her senses to their absolute limit. He told her she had to see with her eyes, hear with her ears, smell the scents, and feel through her skin. Once she had done all that, she had to fight in the realm of consciousness, not in the subconscious. After explaining everything, Sok decided it was time to test her. Before Sung-ah could understand what was happening, Sok had vanished, and she was completely lost trying to find his position. In a flash, Sok appeared behind her, placed his spear at her neck, and said she had done it wrong because she was too slow. He explained that the senses must come first, and thoughts must follow. He told her that in a real fight, there's no time to think. She had to receive sensory input naturally and move. He let her know that the senses she hadn't mastered would only deceive her in battle. After explaining again, Seok suggested they move on to the practical part. Meanwhile, a security guard was watching them train, and he was completely shocked. Even when his friend appeared to watch, they were both left speechless in amazement. The ground used as a training field was completely torn up by the two of them as they furiously exchanged blows. Sok made sure to give Sung-ah a harsh beating, so she could get stronger as quickly as possible. As the fight continued, Seok leaped into the air, ready to unleash a powerful strike. Even Sung-ah realized she couldn't dodge it. Just as the attack was about to land, the security guards called out to Sok, informing him that one of the survivors had just woken up. Sok then decided to end the first training session there, as it seemed Sung-ah had somewhat learned how to block. Sung-ah looked at him in horror, unable to believe that everything she had just been through was only the first session. Upon entering the medical facility, Sok asked the survivor if he was okay, and he nodded. He then revealed that a truck had arrived at the place where he was being held, and strange people had gotten out. Sung-ah asked if those people were other hostages, but he said no, stating that they were too calm to be hostages. Furthermore, he noticed the monsters weren't aggressive towards them at all. It even looked like they were helping those people. He revealed that some of the hostages were grabbed and thrown into the truck. Upon hearing this, Sok finally realized what he had been trying to figure out all along. He had always wondered about the strange reason why there were only 7 hostages. Seok then asked the survivor about the one who had escaped, but he told Seok that it wasn't an escape. Apparently, the bad guys had intentionally let them go. This revelation shocked Sung-ah to her core. After talking with the man, Seok and Sung-ah finally understood what they were up against. Sok said he had always wondered how a civilian could easily escape from a place that he and Sung-ah had struggled so much to get into. Sung-ah then asked Sok if he thought taking this mission was a trap from the very beginning. Suddenly, Seok spoke coldly, wondering how those bad guys dared to pull such a cowardly trick. Sung-ah was completely confused, as she didn't understand why Sok was so angry. She didn't know if it was because the enemy was underestimating him or because they had used human lives as bait for him. The two then asked the survivor if he remembered anything else, and he revealed that the person who got out of the truck had a cat-shaped mascot hanging from their belt. Sung Ah later found this clue, and when Suk asked how she found it, she reminded him that mobile phones weren't just for show. To defend himself, Seok told Sung Ah that civilians like him would be charged enormous internet fees if they accidentally clicked the browser button. Sung Ah couldn't believe this old man still held prejudices from the early 2000s. A while later, they confronted the man they were looking for. The guy had piercings all over his face, and Seok coolly mocked him, asking if he used a sewing machine to patch up his ugly face. However, deep down, Sok could see this guy was no pushover, and he even seemed dangerous as he welcomed Sok and Sung Ah to the big stage. The guy introduced himself as Kim Ji-yeon, declared that he would capture them alive. Seok wondered what he meant, and he decided to show them through his actions. He grabbed someone who had been beaten to a pulp and threw him straight into the rift behind them. Sung Ah was horrified to witness this scene. She believed that people thrown in there wouldn't be able to get out until the rift was destroyed. But suddenly, the person who was thrown into the rift crawled out, and he had been completely transformed. However, Ji-yeon was not pleased with the guy's transformed state, as he looked too weak. With just one kick, he sent the guy flying far away. Sung Ah was terrified by the sight. She wondered if they were planning to turn them both into rift monsters. Ji-yeon boasted about it, saying that sacrificing ordinary people hadn't given them the best results. As soon as he said this, the two of them suddenly realized they weren't ransoming the hostages, but were using them for experiments. Ji-yeon told them both that he didn't really care about them, but for the greater cause and for his leader, he would deign to explain just once. He revealed that he and his comrades were the descendants of Gangun. It seemed their sole purpose was to maintain and strengthen Korea's current power so that no one would dare to touch them. After explaining, he stomped his foot on the ground, unleashing a massive shockwave that sent a series of cars flying into the air. Ji-yeon then kicked a car towards the two of them, but Sung Ah intervened in time, slicing the car in half. Sok prepared to fight, reminding him that their country was already a superpower, but the guy disagreed, saying it still wasn't enough. Ji-yeon rushed towards them, roaring that they would take the country to a level where no one would dare to look down on it, turning it into an absolute superpower. He leaped into the air, aiming a powerful axe kick at Sok. He reminded Sok of the terrible times in the past when they had to pay tribute and bow their heads in shame. While engaging in close combat with Sok, he ranted about wanting to repay every humiliation they had ever suffered tenfold. While exchanging blows with Ji-yeon, Sok realized he was a Taekwondo black belt, and he struck with incredible speed, even without a weapon in hand. Soon, Sok took a full kick to the chest and was sent flying. From Ji-yeon's recent attack, he realized his speed was formidable, but his actual power was still within a manageable range. Sok truly understood this guy's reasoning. If all the corrosion rifts disappeared, it would be very difficult for Korea to maintain its current position. Finally, Sok realized that this guy and his comrades had no intention of saving the world, and he had confirmed it. Sok reminded him that countless people were on the brink of death, meaning they should be the top priority. But Ji-yeon just cursed, saying he didn't know a damn thing. He boasted that they had found a way to control the rifts. As soon as he heard this, Sok realized that being able to control the rifts completely changed the game. If they could do that, they wouldn't have to suffer the current tragedies. Sok then called for a timeout, telling the guy he was considering cooperating with him. He asked him to what extent they could control the rifts, and if the answer was convincing enough, he would hand Sung Ah over to him. Sung Ah was stunned to hear him say that, while Ji-yeon asserted that they had succeeded in controlling the rifts to a moderate degree. Sok interrupted him immediately, exposing that his moderate degree actually meant they still couldn't control them completely. Sok mocked him, saying he talked big, but the actual results were pathetic. Sok called Ji-yeon and his gang a bunch of thugs acting blindly. This infuriated Ji-yeon. He charged towards them with a devastating kick. Seok barely dodged the attack. The kick shattered the ground where he landed. Sok realized he might have angered this guy in a way he hadn't intended. He was just trying to buy time to recover some mana, as the energy bar on his gauntlet had dropped to just 1. Sok realized the best thing he could do right now was to drag Ji-yeon into a war of attrition. Ji-yeon rushed towards Sok, but Sung Ah stepped forward to block his path. Ji-yeon mocked her, saying he thought she was hiding behind because she was too scared. Seeing the electricity radiating from her body, Ji-yeon sneered that at least she had some courage. Sok urged Sung-ah to step back, saying she couldn't handle this guy. But Sung-ah replied that she saw the remaining battery level on Sok's gauntlet. She knew Sok needed time and asked him how much more he needed. Sok replied that he needed 5 minutes. Sung-ah then pulled out a vial of holy water, telling Sok to leave this fight to her. Sung-ah began to glow due to the effects of the holy water. Sok was worried she might be overloaded, but she told him not to worry, as holy water was meant for emergencies, and this was an emergency. Sok then told her to try and hold on for 5 minutes, promising that he would end the fight after that. As Sung-ah prepared to risk her life, she told Sok to strike accurately when the opportunity came. A fierce battle erupted between the two, forcing Sung-ah to put all her strength into the fight. As the battle grew more and more intense, she managed to land a slash along Ji-yun's afterimage, causing her to pause to see if she had taken him down. But Ji-yun had appeared right behind her and delivered a devastating kick that sent her flying into the air, with blood trickling from the corner of her mouth. Just before she hit the ground, Sok had finished charging and rushed to catch her. In a cold and soulless voice, Sok asked Ji-yun if he was ready to die. Ji-yun was shocked as he felt the soaring amount of mana from the man in front of him. He wondered how he had done it, as it was impossible for him to gather that much mana in such a short time. Ji-yun was utterly bewildered, wondering if Sok had been hiding his true strength all this time. Sok asked Ji-yun why he was so surprised, as he was just applying the same principle as the piercings on his face. He was horrified to realize Sok had read him like a book, and Sok sarcastically said that only a fool wouldn't see it. Sok exposed the fact that Ji-yun was leaking mana everywhere because he was constantly abusing a power source beyond his body's limits. However, it was thanks to his carelessness that he was able to restore his paradox flame. Ji-yun thought Sok was just talking nonsense, because there was no method in the world that could absorb that much excess mana. But before he could collect himself, Sok had appeared right behind him, whispering that he didn't need to know, because he was about to die. Sok unleashed a 16-hit combo on the guy, slashing him to pieces from all directions while simultaneously igniting him with the paradox flame. Ji-yun was terrified as he realized he couldn't breathe, couldn't even move a single muscle. Sok praised his effort to stand up, even though he had burned away all his muscle strength. Feeling death approaching, the guy desperately screamed for his captain to save him. Suddenly, a hidden weapon shot towards Seok from above. Sok managed to sense it just before it was too late. He swung his spear up, blocking the vicious attack. The attack seemed to have come from Ji-yun's captain, who was standing menacingly on a rooftop. The person wore a mask and a hood. He praised Sok for being able to block the blow, as his original intention was to shatter his wrist. Sok was curious who this guy was, and deep down, he had a hunch that he was Ji-yun's captain. Although he didn't want to admit it, Sok realized this guy was at least twice as strong as him. Observing more closely, he immediately corrected himself, horrified to realize this person was at least 4 times stronger. The captain then provoked him, asking if Seok wasn't afraid of death. Sok coldly replied that he wasn't afraid of death, because he knew if the guy wanted to, he could have taken his life long ago. Realizing the captain was holding back and not killing him, he asked directly if what he was after was the black flame he was using. By showing off the black flame, the flames burning Ji-yun intensified, inflicting excruciating pain on him. He begged for his life, and the captain ordered Sok to extinguish the flame, emphasizing that he wouldn't repeat himself. Sok realized Ji-yun's mana was depleted, and it was the captain who was using his own mana to keep him alive. Furthermore, he knew that if the arrow the captain had shot was aimed at his head instead of his wrist, he would be dead. But the captain had intentionally not done so. Sok had no choice but to release Ji-yun from the flame's grasp. Before Ji-yun could collapse, the captain appeared in a flash and grabbed him. This sent a shiver down Sok's spine, as he had just witnessed the man's terrifying speed. The captain berated Sok, saying he had just ruined Ji-yun's life, forcing him to live the rest of his days on a wheelchair. He then drew his bow, telling Sok that while he wanted to capture him alive, he didn't necessarily have to be in one piece. Sok then challenged the guy to do what he wanted, because there was no way he would be his puppet. Seeing Sok's stubbornness, the captain decided to retreat, as he still wanted to learn more about the black flame Sok possessed. Before disappearing, he left a message for Sok that one day, he too would have to submit to him. After he left, Seok realized he had just gotten involved with someone with an extremely malicious nature. Sung-ah approached Sok, guessing that they seemed to be after his unique skill. Sok confirmed this, but told her he didn't know why they coveted his skill so much. Sung-ah then wondered why the enemy didn't take her hostage, and Sok suggested they might already know her background. However, Sung-ah didn't think a group of terrorists would care about such things. Sok advised her to think carefully, because these terrorists might even be receiving support from the South Korean government. Sok warned Sung-ah not to breathe a word of this to anyone, but she reminded him that she wasn't very good at lying. Sok suggested they put everything aside and deal with the rift in front of them first. However, Seok told Sung-ah to stay back, as he would go in alone. He told her to rest and recover until he returned. Then, he charged straight into the rift. Sok landed in the level 2 rift and discovered a castle of the undead located right in the center. He walked towards the castle and could feel an extremely dangerous energy radiating from it. Without anyone telling him, Sok realized that the corrosion core was right behind the door. Sok told himself to be careful, or he would surely die if he let his guard down. He pushed the door open and entered, and saw a large cauldron in the distance, making him wonder if that was the core. He was surprised because it was completely different from what he had expected, but suddenly, a hand grabbed his leg from behind. The man looked extremely miserable and in pain. He begged Seok to save him, as his legs had been severed. Suddenly, a tentacle emerged from the cauldron and threw the poor man inside. A moment later, he emerged from the cauldron and had been transformed into an undead. Seok immediately realized the cauldron was what was creating the undead. This disgusted Seok so much that he almost threw up. Suddenly, a chilling voice echoed in the room, referring to Sok as a new sacrifice, but admitting he was a bit different from the others. The owner of the voice soon revealed himself. It turned out to be the core, a swordsman. He drew his sword and urged Sok to do the same, as he intended to use his blood to forge his blade. Sok was a bit startled by his appearance, as the pressure radiating from his body was overwhelming. This further proved how strong the captain was, to be able to subdue the formidable swordsman he was now staring at in fear. Seok was horrified to realize there was definitely someone stronger than the captain. Seok was lost in thought when the swordsman charged and nearly took his head off. Luckily, he managed to dodge just in time. This showed Seok just how strong the person he was facing was. However, Sok decided to go all out from the beginning, before the enemy could see through his weaknesses. Sok charged towards the core with a powerful attack, intending to use it to end the battle. But to his astonishment, the enemy blocked his strongest attack with just one blade. As if that wasn't scary enough, Sok was also worried because he didn't even see the moment he blocked the blow. Before Sok could react to what was happening, the enemy had struck, slashing his body with his sword. Sok was stunned and scared as he realized the enemy was even faster than he had imagined. However, the swordsman praised Sok for making him miss the vital points. Seeing Sok's resilience, the swordsman decided to test him with something more dangerous. He unleashed a series of powerful and lightning-fast slashes at Seok, forcing him to his knees. Realizing the situation was getting worse, Sok knew he had no choice but to use his paradox flame. However, he ran into a problem. Since the enemy was not a living being, the paradox had no meaning when used as an attack. Sok didn't know what to do next, but he still managed to get back up thanks to the paradox flame. The swordsman was surprised that Sok still had the strength to stand, making him wonder what it would take to defeat him. Before he could collect himself, Sok took another barrage of slashes. This time, things were even worse, as every muscle in his body was torn, and Sok nearly lost consciousness. Luckily, the muscles in his shoulders could still move, and he decided to use the paradox flame to enhance his recovery, quickly healing the torn muscles. By doing so quickly, Sok managed to get behind the enemy, believing he finally had a chance. Sok struck, but he was terrified when the enemy vanished right before his eyes and appeared behind him. The enemy taunted Sok, calling him too slow. Then he knocked him to the ground. However, he refused to deliver the finishing blow, and Seok took that opportunity to quickly retreat. The enemy taunted Sok, saying he missed, but Sok shouted at him not to mess around, because he was more than capable of killing him if he wanted to. Sok growled, asking if he was toying with him out of pity. The enemy admitted he could have killed Sok, but he was a different person now. He said that currently, he couldn't even remember his own name. and most of his memories from when he was alive had faded. He revealed that the gaps in his technique caused by memory loss were truly fatal. He said that after being defeated, he was bound by these chains. Sook realized this guy was in the complete opposite state as him. His physical body was still there, but his experience and memories were almost gone. Sook realized the iron collar on his neck was what the captain and Ji-Yun had mentioned. The enemy began to mumble about what he had lost, from his name to the reason why he became a swordsman. He said the only thing left was a resentment steeped in sorrow. Just then, the swordsman suddenly transformed, and Sok realized his resentful aura had become denser. However, he had lost a significant amount of his technique and combat experience. Sok believed he had a chance to win if the guy couldn't finish him in one blow. Sok then decided it was time to unleash his full power if he wanted to defeat this swordsman. The swordsman was surprised to see that all of Seok's wounds had completely healed thanks to the black flame enveloping his body. Sok then placed his hand on the ground, and the swordsman expressed his surprise upon discovering Sok possessed a unique ability. However, he noticed the flame was burning something else, and Sok praised his sharp intuition. Sok explained that the black flame would burn concepts. Although the black flame seemed to possess endless destructive power, in reality, that wasn't the case right now. It turned out that the larger the number and scope of the concept, the more mana it consumed. Because large-scale applications were difficult to control, Sok knew he had to be careful not to be defeated by the backlash. Sok knew that if it were before, he wouldn't have needed to worry about control. He had always used the flame with the lowest risk, but this time it seemed he had no choice. Sok then told the swordsman that he would burn all the durability in this area. The swordsman was confused by that, and Seok bluntly told him he didn't have time to explain. Without hesitation, Seok grabbed his spear and charged straight at him. He successfully pushed the enemy back, and Seok realized he could use this entire situation to his advantage because he had figured out the swordsman's limits. Seeing the situation become serious, the swordsman suggested taking the battle outside. A fierce battle erupted between the two of them, clashing wildly. They destroyed buildings and shattered pillars while trying to eliminate each other. Sok was quickly overwhelmed, and his spear was even cut in half. The enemy then unleashed a powerful slash that seemed like it would finish Sok, but it missed its target. Sok shattered a giant boulder and then charged towards the enemy with lightning speed. He roared like a madman before slamming his weapon into the swordsman. A series of consecutive attacks were unleashed, sending the swordsman flying backward. Witnessing Sok's overwhelmingly powerful attack, the swordsman was forced to ask who he was. He was still trying to recover from the last blow when Sok descended from the sky, delivering precise laser slashes to tear his body apart. The swordsman screamed in pain as he lost most of his life force, but Sok didn't stop and continued to charge at him. The two ended up slashing each other again, but Sok's cut was deeper, slicing through his body diagonally. Neither of them wanted to give up, even though they were screaming in pain. This reminded Sok of his time in the other world. Someone had once asked him what he would do if he met an enemy of equal strength. Sok had replied that one of them would not survive to walk away. Now in the rift, Sok's powerful attack had dealt a fatal blow to the swordsman, even though it drained all of his strength. Even so, in the end, Sok could still smile, because he was the strongest. As the swordsman disintegrated, the rift granted Seok a reward, just like when he had defeated the level 2 core. Seok was happy because the rewards always appeared, just like in the other world. He opened the box to check and found a spearhead, which left him confused about how to use it. However, it didn't take him long to figure it out when he threw it out, and called it back. He realized he could use mana to extend its length. He remembered people saying that the rewards dropped based on the number of people who entered the rift, and he wished he had told Sung-ah to follow him and find a safe hiding spot so she could also get a reward. Then, he noticed the enemy's sword hadn't disappeared, so he decided to take it. A while later, Seok returned to the surface and found Sung-ah sleeping. He threw the sword towards her to wake her up, and she was very surprised because it didn't look like anything she had ever seen before. Sook told her he had picked it up on the way and assured her it was an excellent blade because its previous owner was no pushover either. Sung-ah inspected it and agreed that the sword was indeed excellent. She asked him where he got it, but Seok, exhausted, just told her not to worry about it. All he wanted to know was whether she had rested enough while he was away. Before he could say anything more, Seok also passed out. Sung-ah was extremely surprised, but this showed her that Seok was also human. Due to the extreme danger of the level 2 rift, people went crazy when they heard he had cleared it alone. The public went into a frenzy over this, because even the most talented hunters would find it difficult to do it single-handedly. His face was plastered everywhere, making him the #1 celebrity. Afterward, Seok woke up in a hospital room and realized he couldn't even step outside because a crowd was waiting for him. A while later, a woman with glasses entered the room and introduced herself as Ga Soo-jong. It seemed she was from the Secretariat of Embargo Tower. Seok invited her in, thanking her was paying his hospital bills. However, he also expressed his surprise, as he had never heard of Embargo Tower before. Soo-jong replied that they weren't very well known to the public because their main field of operation was information technology. Soo-jong told him to let her know if there was anything inconvenient, but he replied that there was nothing. However, he let her know he was wondering about one thing. He told Soo-jong that he knew the hospital bills weren't cheap, which meant the organization wanted something from him. Without beating around the bush, Seok asked her directly what they wanted him to do. Before presenting her case, Soo-jong gave Seok a cake to eat. Once they were more comfortable, she began to tell him about the shield generator. She mentioned that it was a device that created a barrier to defend against corrosion creatures. Basically, the organization wanted Seok to help transport this important device. Soo-jong explained to Seok that this was still a prototype manufactured in the US, but if successful and mass-produced, it would bring salvation to areas that hunters couldn't reach. Soo-jong told him this was a life-or-death mission that could change the fate of all humanity. Seok realized this was a large-scale mission, and Soo-jong confirmed it, adding that they were looking for other hunters willing to cooperate. Seok asked her about the other hunters, and she said the Zanabi Guild had agreed to help. Hearing this, Seok realized this whole thing was much bigger than he had imagined. Soo-jong said they would transport the shield generator by train after leaving Vladivostok, and upon reaching the Netherlands, they would use a helicopter to take it to England for a test run. Seok asked why they had to go all the way to England, and she revealed that one of the 8 Great Rifts, Ristorante, was located in Naples, Italy. It seemed the influence of this rift covered everywhere from Europe to North Africa. She said the only safe place left was England, as the area was somewhat protected by the sea. She also revealed that Europe was currently in a state of anarchy, and governments were losing control. It turned out that hunter companies had taken control of various areas, no different from warlords. For this reason, it seemed they would also be transporting relief supplies at the request of international organizations. This immediately told Seok that many people would be targeting the train. Soo-jong then asked Seok if he had ever been abroad, but he said no. He told her this mission would be his first time leaving the country, and Soo-jong said it was very likely they would encounter dangerous situations out there. Seok was confused when she used the word they, and she revealed that she would also be accompanying them on this mission. Seok then told Soo-jong that he wanted Sung-ah to come along. He assured Soo-jong that Sung-ah was a reliable friend, and Soo-jong didn't hesitate to accept Seok's request. Seok was very satisfied with this deal, as it would help his influence grow even larger. A while later, Seok went up to the rooftop where a helicopter was waiting, and he was very surprised to learn that it was the association chairman himself who had arranged this. He told him that his single-handedly clearing a level 2 rift had changed his perspective on many things, and he assured him the association would do its best to provide maximum support for his activities. Deep down, Seok was happy to have proven his strength through his own abilities. This made everything easier. At the same time, he wondered if the chairman knew about Ji-yun and his comrades. He was curious to know if this chairman wanted the tragedy befalling Earth to continue or to end. The moment he stepped onto the helicopter, Seok was surprised to see Si-hun waiting for him. Si-hun praised him, saying that stories about him had spread everywhere, and finding someone who didn't know him was now harder than finding someone who did. Seok then asked her where they were going, and she revealed they were heading to a military base. Seok wondered why, and she said the South Korean military also intended to participate in this mission. Seok understood that every country would be willing to participate because if this device was successful, the reliance on hunters for national defense would be significantly reduced. However, Seok didn't think Korea would like this. Seok then asked Si-hun if she knew of an organization called the Descendants of Gangun. and Si-hun confirmed, saying they were a terrorist group. Sok recounted his encounter with them while handling the mission on Tsushima Island. Si-hun told him that the descendants of Gangun consisted entirely of people of Korean descent and were appearing everywhere. And when hunters were busy clearing rifts, this group would suddenly appear and interfere. Sok offered his analysis of the situation, and as always, Si-hun gave him a piece of candy. This made him wonder why she did that. Just then, Si-hun asked Sok if he had ever left Korea, and Sok was very surprised that she asked the same question as Soo-jong. Sok calmly replied that this was his first time, and Si-hun told him that this mission would make him realize many things.